All right, so I'm Luke, and I am a personal trainer, NCSF certified. I'm here with Jared Shepard, who is NASM certified, right?
Yep, that's right.
And
NASM certified, and
yeah,
I'm working at Cedar Health and Fitness right now as a personal trainer, doing strength and conditioning coaching as well. I've been certified for, let's see, I think I got it like 3 months ago. But I've been doing training for, a while before that, working with my parents, working with some of their friends, working with some of my girlfriend's friends. So, been in the industry for a little bit, kind of know my way around. I got about 12 direct clients right now, and then, obviously the classes. So, yeah,
yeah.
doing
So
good.
between us, probably have more than 10 years of experience in not only training but in coaching. I would say at least a little bit. So we feel like we have at least some experience to talk about this stuff. So we got a bunch of questions from you guys, and we wanted to answer them. I believe the first one was about prepping for a bodybuilding show. So I want to have you start off on that one, Jared.
Yeah, sure. So this one was from Mintu. So Mintu from UMass Lowell, part of the UML Barbell Club that Luke and I both helped to start, actually. Um, so Mintu was asking me, she basically just said, "What do you eat?" So I turned that into, what do you eat during contest prep, post show, and then like my diet in the off season. So
Right.
for anybody that doesn't know, I compete in the OCB, which is a natural bodybuilding federation. And last weekend, I actually just got my pro card. I won the overall at the OCB North Shore Natural and in men's open bodybuilding, which I was fired up about. Luke was backstage with me,
Right.
helping me get pumped up, making sure I wasn't freaking out too much on stage. So that was great.
Good time.
Um, yeah, so during I guess I'll start off with the off season. My metabolism I find is very adaptive. Some people have like super adaptive metabolisms where basically they'll want to their body weight will want to stay wherever it is, and it'll be really hard to move up. You can add a ton of calories, but you'll eventually just start to burn them off real quick. You can take a ton of calories out, and then your metabolism slows down, and you can't lose a ton of weight. Mine's like that. So basically off season, I can get away with eating a lot of calories. I want
Yeah.
to say, my maintenance, in the November, December, kind of peak bulk phase
Bulk.
is, at least 4,000 calories given my workload. I mean,
I could attest
I'm
to
an
that.
active person, and our training sessions are super long, as
Yeah.
Luke can attest.
Yes,
Train
absolutely.
a lot,
Yeah.
so um, it's something that I really enjoy doing. So I can get away with having more calories in the off season.
Hmm.
Um, I try to be, I kind of try to follow like IFYM for the most part if it fits your macros. Kind of like an 80-20 sort of rule in the off season where, if I'm eating 4 meals a day, basically once every 2 days or so, I'll have a meal that's kind of not so clean or not so good for me. What a bodybuilder would consider like off their diet. Um, but yeah, for the most part, what I really like to stick to, and something that we can talk about going forward as we, kind of delve into nutrition is like whole foods. So
Yeah.
things like steak, potatoes, in the morning, whole eggs, oatmeal, things that are going to be satiating, things that are going to be nutrient dense, and you know, basically only having supplements as supplements. You don't
Right.
want supplements to be replacements. That's where I think a lot of people get caught up.
Absolutely.
With some issues in their nutrition. So yeah, off season, kind of just eat, a lot of whole food, try to basically pack on muscle. I'm not like a dirty bulker, I want to say. I try to stay relatively lean,
Just the
but
Reese's.
yeah, just the Reese's. Well, I mean, Reese's are so anabolic, you just
Yeah.
can't avoid them. Just be careful with the drug testing with the
Oh,
Reese's.
yeah.
but
Cool.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, yeah, a lot of whole foods, and I stick to the same kind of whole foods during contest prep. I'm a big believer that especially in the weeks leading up to a contest, you don't want to drastically change your diet because, a lot of people think, oh, I got to cut out dairy now, or oh, I got to cut out whey protein, I got to cut out, fish or chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, if those foods don't give you problems in your off season, if they don't give you problems in your prep, why would you cut them out right before a bodybuilding show? Because what's going to happen is you're going to have to replace those foods with something else, and that might not be something that your body agrees with or is used to.
Yeah.
And you could come out on stage super flat, you could come out super watery. Your waistline could get all blown out because you're not digesting the foods very well. So contest prep, basically what I like to do is just take some calories out from fats
Right.
starting at the beginning. There is a certain amount of fat that you have to eat during the day. you can't just get away with eating no fat whatsoever because your hormones will be all out of whack. And we don't have to go into the, yeah, you don't have to go into like the science of all of it, but, I like to take out some of the calories from fats first, just because I feel better in the gym with more carbs. I feel like, I have more energy. And where I'm taking calories out of is the meals furthest away from my training during the day. So basically, if I train in the morning, I want a decent amount of calories before my training. I want a decent amount after my training. And I usually have some sort of like intra-workout drink as well. So I want to keep those the same as long as I can. So if I'm taking out calories from meals, they're going to be later in the day if I'm training in the morning, or vice versa. If I'm training at night, they'll be from the morning meals. So that's kind of like contest prep. I basically try to drop, maybe 200 calories a week as needed. I just kind of watch the scale. I go for 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of body fat a week.
Yeah.
This recent prep, I was a little bit more aggressive. I was kind of up near 2 pounds a week for, maybe 10 weeks, something like that. And then I kind of went, as my metabolism slowed down, maybe 1.5 pounds to 1 pound a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then right after the show, it's always interesting. Obviously the pizza, the Ben and Jerry's. The first thing I ate was buffalo chicken pizza. That was incredible. And then Ben and Jerry's. I just had a great weekend in Boston with my girlfriend Kayla, where we basically did a mini food tour. Got some Italian food, got some donuts. The typical bodybuilder cheat foods. So it was good. Had a great weekend. I'm feeling good. The carbs are back in my system, getting pumps again. So yeah, it's good. So, I'd love to have you talk about it too, Luke, obviously, because, you haven't yet started focusing on bodybuilding, even though I think at some point, you could, if you wanted to. But yeah, as a powerlifter, where do you stand on this?
So I think you covered most of it. Honestly, a lot of it's meal timing. It's more important for bodybuilders, I feel like. However, everyone should focus on when they eat and how much they eat. I like to eat before I work out for sure. Otherwise, my training sessions are lackluster. I feel like I really can't push myself, especially during a bulk, right? Like right now, when I'm at the gym for 2 to 3 to 4 hours sometimes every day, 6 days a week, you got to have that food. I feel like, especially, I like to have a lot of protein right after I work out. Now, there's science to suggest that there is an anabolic window. There's science to suggest that there isn't. I'm not going to say that there is or isn't, but for me, anecdotally, I like to eat protein right after my workouts because I personally feel like it helps me. Now, I've never done really bodybuilding prep like you. I'd say the lowest body fat percentage I got to was about 12%, where you were sitting at like 4.
maybe a little above that. I mean, I think the scan that I got done was just a little bit optimistic, but yeah, I got down there for sure.
Yeah, you did. And at those levels, it's a way different ball game. You got to focus on a lot of things like fats for hormones and everything like that. So yeah, I would just say, just make sure you know what you're eating. Whole foods are almost always better. Things that are bioavailable. What I mean by that are things that you can easily digest with the flora you have in your stomach, your gut bacteria, basically. Stand efforting. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah. So I guess going off of that, one of the questions that I get a lot in my training sessions with clients or just people that I talk to in the gym in general is like, how important is nutrient timing really? Like meal frequency, intra-workout nutrition, etc., stuff like that. So I guess the first one, nutrient timing. John Meadows goes into this a lot in some of his podcasts and some of his videos on YouTube. And it was an interesting thing that he says, and I've actually tried this and have found it to be very true, is go into the gym and do your normal workout fasted on an empty stomach in the morning. If you're used to training in the morning, go in, don't have, really any food before, don't have any intra-workout, do your workout, and then, make yourself wait till 2, 3 in the afternoon to eat your first meal.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, I've found that the delayed onset muscle soreness is so much worse if I don't have like a pre-workout, an intra-workout, and a post-workout meal. Yeah. And the delayed onset muscle soreness isn't really an indicator of like muscle growth, but if you are going to the gym and you're fasted, you're going to be breaking down, muscle protein, because that's basically what you need to do in the gym in order for your body to make adaptations to put on more muscle, to get stronger. Right. You need to damage the muscle. So it would make sense that if you were going in on an empty stomach and you don't have, any pre-workout meal, you don't have any intra-workout, after the workout, you're probably going to want something, pretty quick, within that, 30-minute window or so.
Yeah.
I hate calling it an anabolic window because eating a meal with protein in it
It's an
is
apple.
in itself anabolic. Like,
Absolutely.
it's not a window where it's like, if you don't eat within half an hour, you won't get an anabolic response. That's just
Right.
not how the body works. But I do think if you're looking to kind of optimize your training, which I think everybody should be doing to some degree, you don't want to just go in the gym just because, like,
Right.
you're there to get results.
Don't
So
waste your own time.
yeah, so I mean, if you're going to train fasted, I think that, that post workout or even an intra workout like carbohydrate drink or maybe some essential amino acids would be a really good idea. Um, because, you could go in, you could do the same workout on an empty stomach and then not eat until 2, or go in, do that workout, have your intra workout carbs or, EAAs, and then have a post workout meal. I can almost guarantee you'll be way more sore after the workout where you don't eat afterwards, just because you're just not recovering as effectively. Your cortisol levels after your workout will be really high. Your hormones are not going to be optimal for building muscle. So I think that's where it becomes really important. And obviously for on-stage bodybuilders, it's a bigger deal. Um, and then in terms of like meal frequency, there isn't a whole lot of research to suggest that like for fat loss it's all that important. Many people, like, you'll see the IIFYM guys, or the intermittent fasters on Instagram or YouTube that just eat one huge meal a day and they stay in great shape. They get all their macros in. And you can lose weight that way because basically what it comes down to is net calorie balance over the course of a day or a week. If you're in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you're going to lose weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit. So, if you're trying to lose body fat, it's not that important. But I think where it becomes important is when you're trying to put on some muscle mass, because there is some evidence to show, and Lane Norton covers this really well, that meal frequency, kind of every 4 to 6 hours eating a meal, so you end up with 4 to 6 meals a day, is kind of optimal for muscle building, because what ends up happening is you have sort of a refractory period in between meals where you can't spike muscle protein synthesis again. You can't like eat a meal, finish eating your steak or whatever, and then half an hour be like, oh, I want more muscle, and then eat more steak.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you can't spike the muscle protein synthesis anymore. You've already done that.
Yes.
Your body needs time to kind of go back down to baseline before you can spike it again.
Yeah.
So I think that for somebody who's trying to put on some lean body mass, I think somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 meals a day is probably optimal. As we've discussed, something maybe half an hour to an hour before your workout with some carbohydrates, maybe not a ton of fat, and a decent amount of protein is a good idea.
Yeah.
Intra workout, if you want to do like a some sort of like recovery drink, like a essential amino acids or carbohydrates, I think that can be beneficial, definitely. And it's also just a little bit extra calories if you struggle gaining weight. And then post workout, I think is going to be really important. Just spike muscle protein synthesis, get some carbohydrates in, get the glycogen going back to the muscles. Salt your meals. There's a lot of research to show that sodium is helping to drive carbohydrates into the muscle cells, into glycogen storage, as opposed to adipose tissue or fat cells. So having a meal with a decent amount of sodium, replenish your electrolytes, get some water, have some fats, some proteins, some carbs all together, I think would be a really good idea, within that hour or so after your workout.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. Only thing I would add to that is just make sure when he says electrolytes, magnesium, sodium, potassium are the big three. There are other ones, but you could find those in any electrolyte drink, Smart Water, anything like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So let's move on to the next question. I think it's progressive overload technique, your favorite one. I can start on that if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
I talked about this a little bit. Well, I thought about it, I should say. And I think my favorite progressive overload technique is, I'll give you an example. Say I'm doing 10 sets of 3, roughly 90% of a max one week. Say that's a workout, a heavy squat day. I would say I like to see how I'm feeling the next week. So obviously I'll have some other leg days in between that day and then the next heavy day. But I'm talking strictly about the heavy days themselves here. So for instance, if I have a heavy squat day on Monday and the next week I also have a heavy squat day, the first heavy squat day, I'll do, say, a 10 by 3 with 90 to 92%. Say, let's say that's 405. And then the next week, I'll add maybe 1 to 2%, see how that moves, and I'll keep adding weight week to week until I feel as if though I've reached my absolute maximum for a 10 by 3. So in this case, 10 sets of 3 reps. For me, that's more of a powerlifting type of seeing where you're at, maybe after a peaking cycle or after a hypertrophy phase, some sort of mesocycle. But I like that because I feel as if though it really helps me train my central nervous system to fire off the motor units how I want them to. And it also helps me keep my cues down for heavier lifts because your form is more likely to break down when you're under a heavier percent of your max.
Sure. So you're talking in terms of like progressive overload, you're talking weight week to week.
Yes, exactly.
So
which is only one part.
Right. So I think just to back up a little bit, what we mean by progressive overload is basically increasing a stimulus week to week from your training in order for your body to make adaptations to grow bigger, to grow stronger.
Exactly.
And these things can work in different ways, if you're training for strength or if you're training for hypertrophy. But basically what you want to look for, in my opinion, is total volume moved week to week in terms of weight, in terms of time under tension, even in terms of range of motion, because you can, let's say that you're squatting 405 for those sets of 3 one week, and then the next week you jump to 415, but that 415 feels really heavy. So you cut your range of motion short and you decrease, the time that you spend in the eccentric portion of the lift. So you're just kind of bombing into the hole and then, coming right up, your form breaks down. Well, guess what? You have less time under tension, you have less range of motion, and that's going to equate over time to less volume because you basically have spent less time underneath that weight. So for me, I think that it's important to kind of make the distinction that if you're going for weight week to week, you want your reps to look the same week to week, and not just go in the pursuit of moving more weight however you can move it.
Yeah.
So, keeping your form the same, not just kind of dropping the weight down like on a bench press, dropping it down to your chest and then trying to shove it off your chest, with terrible form. And I mean, we all see it in the gym, and, that's why the people who are in the gym doing that, it's like, why can't I get stronger? It's like, well, you're not really increasing a stimulus week to week. Your form is just getting worse.
Right.
Even though the weight is higher, there isn't more tension on the muscle that will grow it or, get it stronger. So I think that's really important to cover. For me, I totally agree with you from a powerlifting perspective. I think week to week, you should kind of focus on, bumping the weight up a little bit, because in powerlifting, your goal is to move the maximum amount of weight for one repetition. And obviously you have to make sure, like on squats, you hit depth. On bench press, you're going with the commands. You can't just, have terrible form on all your lifts.
Right.
So basically for me, I think, you're definitely right for a powerlifting perspective. In terms of hypertrophy, I like to look at total volume. And what I really like to do is make sure that the sets and reps each workout are looking the same.
Right.
Because in bodybuilding, obviously you need to be strong in order to move weight, in order to make those muscular adaptations. I think it's really important to focus on being stronger. But what I like to actually have my clients do is each week. So I basically do like a 3 to 4 week periodization depending on the person. Yeah. So the first week, say they're doing like a Bulgarian split squat or something like that. I'll have them hold, let's say they can hold 30-pound dumbbells in each hand and do split squats for sets of 8. So they can do 8 on their left leg, then 8 on the right leg. And that's probably, going to be decently tough, but they can probably crank out a few more reps. Well, next week, what I want them to do is take that same 30 pounds, but add a 9th rep. Yeah. And I want that 9th rep to look like their 8th rep from last week. Yeah. I don't want it to be any more of a grind. I don't want them to lose their form on that 9th rep. I want it to look pretty good. Right. The third week, we go in, we grab the 30-pound dumbbells again, and we do 10 reps on each leg. So we're kind of increasing the volume over the course of the week, but instead of increasing the weight, we're increasing the repetitions. Right. And then, the fourth week, I might have them drop back down to 8 reps, but now they're grabbing 35-pound dumbbells and they're doing 8 reps. And then the next week, they're doing the 35-pound dumbbells for 9 reps and then 10 reps. And they're dropping down back to 8 reps again, but they're doing 40-pound dumbbells. So I think that's really effective for muscular hypertrophy because you kind of work in a few different rep ranges. You're not just kind of sticking to like sets of 5 or 6 on every single workout and trying to go up in weight. I think the idea of adding repetitions typically tends to help people keep their form a little bit more solid, because, based on the day, you might not be feeling that strong. You might not want to pick up more weight in your hands. And just psychologically, that can throw a lot of people off. So if I make them, fight for 1 or 2 more reps, well, the next week they might be more confident. They might say, "Oh, I have more reps in the tank this week because last week was still easy."
Right.
And I work up that way. And then, over the course of the week, they're probably adding, let's say they're doing that for 5 different exercises.
Yeah.
We're adding 5 pounds on each, or sorry, we're adding 1 rep on each of those 5 exercises. That ends up being, a pretty significant amount of volume that they're going up each week, even though they're only doing 1 extra rep on each set of each exercise. Well, guess what? That 1 extra rep is going to equate to a decent amount of volume over the week that the people may not be able to get to just by increasing the weight, with good form. So that's what I like to do. And I think that you can also do things like, the amount of sets you could bump up every week. So say you're doing a 5x3, 5 sets of 3 with, 90% of your max. And then the next week you could do 6 sets of 3 with 90% of your max. The next week you could do 7 sets of 3 with 90% of your max. I think then what you need to be careful of is just like the amount of time you're spending in the gym and the amount of fatigue that you're building up, because what happens when you get to like 15 sets of 3 on squats? You're just going to die. Like it's just not going to be fun. So.
Especially at 90% of your max.
Yeah, exactly. The reps are going to get sloppy, and I just don't think it's that efficient personally. And then the other one, that this person said, this question's from Ryan Johnson, by the way. He mentioned rest time.
Okay.
So what you can do is equate volume to basically pounds moved per hour.
Yes.
So say you're in the gym for 60 minutes, and you're resting for a minute in between sets. Well, what happens if you rest for 45 seconds in between sets the next week? Well, you're going to have more sets being done, or more reps being done, or something, extra that's being done, because you have an extra 15 seconds after each set that you're working. So that equates to what, over the course of an hour, maybe, 12 more minutes of work, which is a lot. So that equates to more volume week to week as well. So you can do things like that. I think for me, the two that we focused on were adding repetitions to your sets and adding weight. And I think those are kind of the main drivers, if you want to call them that. And I think the ways that people are going to have the most success overloading their lifts. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. That's good. You want to do next question?
Yeah, definitely.
Which one's the next one? OHP?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. I'll take over this here.
You have the better overhead press, so take it away. Good sir.
Some pretty good OHPs there. Room to improve, but I would say, if you want to get better at overhead press, and I assume you mean with a barbell, the most important thing is just to overhead press more. When you're learning a movement, half of the battle is just teaching your body to learn how to use those muscles in a specific pattern. And what I mean by that is making sure you have the same range of motion every time, the same grip width. You're gripping the bar with the same amount of strength. When you unrack the bar, you are tightening your glutes, tightening your abdominals, so that the platform you have to push off of is the same. If you focus on these sort of cues, you're going to have a good base to build off from. Now, that being said, I would say the second most important thing is increasing your bench press max, whether in repetitions or an actual true 1 rep maximum. The reason I say this is because your anterior deltoids are extremely involved in the bench press, especially if you have a slight arch, which you should for the safety of your shoulders. And if you increase your anterior deltoid strength, your overhead press is going to increase.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. And I think I totally agree with you that, for most movements, the best thing to do to get better at them is to just do them more. And that doesn't mean you should go right into Bulgarian method for squats and squat every single day. I think, you have to have some sort of slow increase over time. So if you're squatting once a week and your squat isn't that good, maybe start squatting twice a week, and, see how it moves up from there.
Yeah.
You don't want to go from, squatting once a week to squatting 5 times a week, because then when your body adapts to those 5 days a week, where do you go from there? You squat 6 times a week? Like, that's going to be ridiculous. You
Yeah.
add more sets, all you're going to be doing in the gym is squats. You're going to take so much away from your other lifts.
Exactly.
So in terms of overhead press strength for me, I don't have the best overhead press strength, but I think what is important for me is making sure all of my sets are productive. And what I mean by that is, when I go to the gym and I do overhead press, I don't have a whole lot of stamina. I don't have a whole lot of real good hard sets of overhead press in me. I find that my shoulders fatigue relatively quickly with heavy overhead movements. So for me, in order to overhead press more, I'm not going to do more sets in one day. I'm going to overhead press more often. So instead of doing, overhead press twice a week and adding sets, to those 2 days, I'm going to go from overhead pressing twice a week, maybe 3 sets per workout, to 3 times a week, 3 sets per workout. And what that's going to do is it's going to enable me to go into the gym feeling a little bit more fresh, feeling like my shoulders are a little bit stronger, and I'm not killing myself on the first 2 or 3 sets. And then, I'm like, oh man, I got 3 more sets to do. Well, these are going to be terrible. They're going to move slow. I'm probably not going to be activating the muscle as effectively because, my low back might arch, stuff like that. So this is actually something that, I heard Jeff Nippard talk about. He talks about the same thing where, he may only have 3 real good sets of overhead press in him on a good day. So what I'll do is, if I want to increase the amount that I'm overhead pressing, I'm just going to add days that I'm overhead pressing. Yeah. So if I have 2 push days during the week, so right now I'm following a push-pull leg split. If I have 2 push days during the week and I overhead press on both of those days, and that's not enough, well then on one of my pull days, I'm also going to overhead press. And it's probably going to be a lighter workout. It's probably going to be something more focused around speed because I would have just overhead pressed the day before. But that extra volume, getting that range of motion really locked in, and just activating the muscles more in that plane of motion is going to get me better at overhead pressing. So I think for me, what I would recommend is, do 3 to 4 real good hard sets of overhead press and leave it at that for the day. And in order to overload, just add more overhead pressing to, each workout. So
it's true. I would say that's completely true. I agree with you 100%. Pressing movements, especially for myself, if I do them more frequently, not necessarily more sets, I tend to do better at them and grow faster, especially overhead press. I would also say that sometimes adding more weight isn't always beneficial. Like you said, speed is so important. You got to learn how to use and move that bar as quickly as possible, because you don't fail a lift because you're weak throughout the whole movement. You fail a lift because you're weak through the slowest part.
Right, exactly.
Or weak off, or not fast enough off your fastest part, which most lifters will understand. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Awesome.
So I think let's see. The next question that I had was from Matt Reeves. He was asking what supplements we recommend.
Yeah.
So I think what people get caught up in supplements is, like I was saying before, they become a replacement for food.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a path that you want to go down. I think you want to get most of your nutrients, as much as you can, from whole foods. Yeah. Because they're going to be so much more nutrient dense. They're going to be so much more bioavailable. Yeah. And in general, I think, just anecdotally, that's probably better for your digestion to have whole foods in your system as opposed to a ton of supplements.
I would agree.
Just because, I mean, if you go through the day and all you're drinking is like maltodextrin for your carbohydrates, and then swigging a protein shake, and then having some creatine, and then like pre-workout, you do that all day, like you're gonna feel like crap at the end of the day. I mean, there's so much. I hate to sound like one of these people, but there's so much like artificial ingredients in those drinks,
fillers.
And additives, fillers, fake sweeteners, stuff like that. And even if you get kind of the top of the line products, go an entire day only using supplements instead of real food and see how you feel. I guarantee you're not gonna like it. But a lot of people won't do that. But what they'll do is they'll be like, oh, after my workout, instead of eating a steak, I'm gonna go have like a protein shake because protein shakes are what give you gains. It's like, that type of logic is just not, it's just not there. And I know that it's tough because supplement companies tend to market that their product is like better than whole food. You'll get better results based on this. But if you optimize your diet, there's almost no need for any supplement. You know, unless you're deficient in something, or unless it, you know, is your performance is decreased because of you know, you don't have any creatine in your system because you just eat chicken all the time instead of steak, something like that. So if you're gonna take supplements, which I do, I take a whey protein isolate if I need more protein during the day. Sometimes when you're at the peak of a bulk, it can be hard to, you know, scarf down another 8-10 ounces of steak, you know, on top of all the carbohydrates that you're eating, you know, if it's oatmeal or potatoes, stuff like that, your vegetables, you know, your stomach gets really full. And a lot of times people are just like, oh man, I can't eat anymore. And that's where I think a protein shake can come in handy. What I would suggest is if you're going to do protein shakes, for the sake of adding mass, eat as much real food as you can before you have your protein shake. So go in, you know, have some carbohydrates, you know, have some fats, you know, try to get a little bit of steak down, try to get some sweet potato or some oatmeal, some vegetables, things like that into you. And then when you're full from that whole food, it's always easier to drink your calories than it is to eat them. So once you're full, you know, wait 5-10 minutes and then drink that protein shake. And it's going to go down a lot easier than if you had a protein shake right after the gym and then you tried to go home and eat more real food. You're just not going to, it's not going to be productive. Yeah, exactly. You end up on the toilet for hours.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would recommend in terms of protein. The other one that I have a lot is caffeine. I cycle on and off of caffeine. I'm really on it right now because during contest prep, I just need that bump in energy. When my carbs get way down, you know, those last 3 weeks or so, you know, I really need it, and I start not relying on it, but you definitely have better workouts. You have, it's been shown that you have increases in strength, increases in stamina when you take caffeine as opposed to when you don't. And those performance increases over time can lead to more muscular gain and more strength. So I think caffeine's a real good one. That being said, if you have real good workouts and you don't take caffeine, don't start taking it just for the sake of taking it, because then guess what? You become reliant on it. And you know, it is important to cycle off it every once in a while because caffeine is one of those supplements that you will build up a tolerance to. So you know, usually every month or two, you know, take a week completely off of caffeine, or just, you know, taper it down a ways, just to kind of give yourself a period to wear down your tolerance a little bit. So then when you go back to your normal caffeine intake, you feel that boost in energy again. And then lastly, this would be more, I think, for powerlifters, would be creatine monohydrate. The research behind creatine is almost endless. It's a very safe supplement. There are thousands of peer-reviewed articles on creatine, dosages, usages, you know, stuff like that. It, you know, for some people can lead to some strength increases, and it tends to be a very safe supplement, unless you have some sort of pre-existing kidney condition. It's been proven time and time again to be a very safe supplement to take. The one thing that I would watch out for with creatine monohydrate is I actually have like a couple of the containers here, and basically in the suggested use, like right here, it says loading phase. If you're not currently consuming a creatine product, for best results, begin consuming 1 scoop 4 times a day for the first 5 to 7 days. Well, creatine can only load into your system at about 5 grams a day anyway. So why would you just like mash more creatine into your system in the hopes that it's going to store into the muscle faster? It's just not going to work. So my advice would be, don't do the loading phase. Take 5 grams of creatine a day. You know, just 1 scoop, even if you have never taken it before. See how your body reacts to it. See how your digestion is, because some people, it can, you know, kind of upset their stomachs. And it can be a little bit dehydrating. So make sure you're drinking enough water, because the main thing that creatine does is pull water into the muscle cells to keep them hydrated, to keep them moving properly. which is great. It can increase your lean body mass a little bit because you're storing a little bit more water, a little bit more glycogen in the muscle, make you have a little bit more of that fuller look. And it's awesome because you never need to cycle off of it. A lot of people think you need to cycle off and then load it again, but you don't build up a tolerance to creatine. You basically fill it up in your system, and then as long as you take it every day, your muscle cells will stay saturated. So right from the beginning, 1 scoop of creatine a day, and just do that every day as you want to use it. And I think that can be real beneficial for some strength gains. So then Luke, if there's any other things that you want to talk about or add to.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. So we're talking about creatine monohydrate. That's the supplement that has the most studies done on it. There's other types of creatine, but I would definitely recommend creatine monohydrate. As always, I would say do your own research, find your own studies, and look at things yourself, so that way you can trust the decision you're going to make. But I would say creatine monohydrate is the most safe and has the most peer-reviewed studies, like you said. So you did my big three, actually. I was going to say protein, creatine, and and caffeine. But honorable mentions, I would say, would be citrulline, which actually converts to arginine in your gut, which converts to nitric oxide and is a vasodilator, which basically means that your veins become more open, they dilate, and allow more blood flow throughout your body. Gives you kind of that fuller, pumped look. And there's some studies suggesting that can help you actually have more muscular endurance. I would say read up on them yourself and make your own decision, but definitely makes you look good.
Absolutely. That's something that I actually use like right before I go out on stage at bodybuilding contests, just to basically just to have that more, vascular, fuller look.
Right.
Because when you get down to essential levels of body fat, you're not really eating a lot of carbs, so your muscles don't tend to be that full until you really carb up right before the show. But yeah, something like a citrulline will help you fill out a little bit, especially on a cut. Back muscles. This is from Ashley Grecian. How to loosen up your back muscles, or we can just talk about tight muscles in general, and like mobility. So what are your thoughts on that, being a powerlifter?
So tight muscles are something I deal with very occasionally. I tend to stretch more than I used to, so that helps. But most of the time, it's not always necessarily stretching that can help with a tight muscle. A tight muscle can be caused by a myriad of things. A muscle could be tight because it needs to be stretching, which is what most people think, and that's the most common issue. However, sometimes a muscle is tight because it's overactive. Now, muscle can be overactive for a bunch of reasons. One of the most common ones is that the antagonist muscle, for instance, if we're talking about quads being tight, then your hamstrings would be the antagonist muscle. The antagonist muscle is not strong enough to pull back the other muscle, and therefore creating an imbalance or a bad ratio of power. So if you have overactive quads, maybe try increasing your hamstring strength, see how that works, because stretching sometimes can actually make the issue worse. I know in cases of something called anterior pelvic tilt, which basically just means your pelvis is tilted anteriorly or forward, stretching your hamstrings seems like the logical solution. However, most of the time you actually need to strengthen your abdominals and strengthen your hamstrings. So it really depends. Another thing I would like to mention is something called myofascial release, which in layman's terms is basically just touching the area that hurts or palpating it. And for instance, if my anterior deltoid hurts, I would rub the area, and that's called myofascial release. It helps release endorphins and makes you feel better, and can move around, tight knots, things like that.
Yeah, and like foam rolling is an example of myofascial release. Rolling on a lacrosse ball. Kelly Starrett has a lot of information on mobility. Kelly Starrett is like, if you have tight muscles, that's who you go to. So check out his book, Supple Leopard. I think there's like 2 of them now, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like Luke said, myofascial release, static stretching can be important. The other thing to note too is that just because one muscle is tight and is really sore doesn't mean that that's the muscle that is the issue. So like in this example, for like tight back muscles, I had that issue for years when I was running distance, and I could not get my back to loosen up. And I would try to foam roll my low back. I'd try to stretch it. I went to physical therapy for it. They did all sorts of like stim on my back, and nothing really helped a whole lot until I found that I needed to get my hamstrings loose, because my hamstrings, I didn't feel like were an issue. They felt pretty good for the most part. I didn't have much mobility in them, but I didn't see it as an issue. What I saw as an issue was my back. So but then when I started to stretch out my hamstrings, well, all your muscles are, kind of, they're not like attached to each other, but they work together. So like your posterior chain is like basically the whole backside of your body, from your calves all the way up to your traps. Like you have musculature that runs all the way from your head to your toes, basically. So if you have your hamstrings are super tight, but you're feeling like back tightness, chances are that the hamstrings are so tight that it's pulling on those back muscles, and therefore your back is tight. So um, I think an important thing to do is not, if you're focusing on that one area and it's really not helping, explore some of the other muscle groups around the problem area with stretching, with myofascial release, and just try to loosen them up a little bit. And especially with myofascial release, you really want to be, somewhat aggressive with it.
Yeah.
A lot of people will sit on a foam roller and not really,
Make it hurt.
for the right, yeah, for the sake of the terminology, go hard enough.
Yeah.
But you want it to be fairly painful. I mean, the first time I foam rolled my IT bands,
Oh.
like the side of my legs, like effectively, I was almost in tears. Like it's gonna hurt to loosen up those muscles that have been really tight or really overactive for a long time. So um, yeah, focus on the problem area. If you can't get the problem area to release, just working on it directly, work on some of the areas around it, and I think that can be beneficial for you.
Well said, and agreed, 100%. Cool.
All right. So let's see. Next, we got a question from Zach Moore. What is the monetary cost of a bodybuilding show?
Oh yeah.
So like, say your first show. This is kind of up my alley. So I competed for the first time in 2017. I've done the same show twice, the OCB North Shore Natural in Peabody, and it depends on what federation that you compete in. I think in general, actually getting into the federation itself, so like getting your OCB membership card, I think it was about $70 or $75 for an amateur membership card. So we're talking about like the first bodybuilding show that you do. So you have to compete as an amateur. You can't just walk onto a pro stage. So you're looking at about $75 to get your OCB membership card. From there, you have to actually pay to get into the show. And there is kind of a range here. So some of the bigger shows that have a lot more competitors that do really well might charge you close to $100 to get into the show. Some of the smaller shows with not as many competitors, or not as competitive lineups, might be like $60 to get into the show. But either way, you're looking at between 120 and 170-ish dollars so far. Then you have the tanning. So obviously on stage, you have to be super tan. You have to be really, really dark, because if you're not, the stage lights are just going to wash you out. And no matter how good you look in person, under those stage lights, you're just going to look flat. You're not going to see the definition in the muscles. So the tan, typically ranges between $100 and $150. So, right now you're looking at, $300 ish, right around there for your first show. Apart from that, let's see, if you want professional stage photographs done, which if it's your first show, like obviously you're going to want some real good photos, because the lighting in bodybuilding shows is really tough to like take photos from the audience, even with a real good camera. A lot of the times they won't let you use the flash, and the stage lights will just kind of drown you out a little bit. So professional photos are like $100. Obviously, those are optional, but you're looking between $300 and $400 right now. Let's see. You'll need posing trunks. You can get posing trunks for pretty cheap. $20-$25. If you want really nice ones, maybe closer to 50. So, and then obviously you have, apart from the monetary costs, you just have like the time commitment. So if you're working like full time, there may be days where you have to go to like get your tanning done, or you might have to you might just feel like crap one day and have to take like a sick day or something like that. You have the cost of like relationship time, like with your spouse, your family, your friends. All that sort of stuff is kind of falls a little bit by the wayside, because bodybuilding in and of itself is a very selfish sport, whether you want it to be or not. And there are ways that you can be more active with your family and with your friends and everything like that, but it becomes a lot more difficult on a bodybuilding prep, especially the last 4 to 6 weeks. And then let's see. So I mean, right now you're looking at probably between $400 to $550, depending on where you're competing, what type of show you're doing. And then if you're doing an OCB show, or a lot of the natural federations will require you to do a polygraph beforehand as like a preliminary drug test. The polygraphs are usually about $60, so that's another add-on there. If you compete in the NPC is non-drug tested, so you don't have to pay for a drug test or a polygraph or anything like that. But if you are untested, and you are competing, enhanced, obviously you have the cost of steroids or anabolics or whatever you're taking, and that can be extremely expensive. That's that adds up to thousands and thousands of dollars a year, and vastly outweighs the cost of the actual show. But yeah, for my knowledge, amateur bodybuilding show, if you're natural, probably gonna be between $450 and $600, somewhere around there, all in, given everything. So yeah, those are kind of like the big things. And then obviously you got to buy the food. If you take supplements, you got to buy the supplements, but that's kind of a year-round thing. So yeah, that's what I got.
Well said. I have nothing to add.
I mean, well, if you wanted to, you could talk about like cost of a powerlifting meet too. If people are interested in that, you are a powerlifter by trade, so
by trade, by
yeah.
choice, by destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say powerlifting probably is a little bit less expensive than bodybuilding, but there are certain federations, like for instance the USAPL, USA Powerlifting. It's a drug-tested federation. And it's probably the most common in the world. You have the International Powerlifting Federation, which this is a part of, and you need a membership for that, just like the NPC, which is about $100. So that's just a membership just to be able to sign up for a meet, and then you have to actually sign up for the meet itself, which costs money, and that can range, I don't know, I would say anywhere from $30 to $75 from what I've seen. Yeah, and then you have the cost of traveling there, because usually they're not close to you. There's some state meets, but most of the time, I would say I found that they're not close to me or close to my clients or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, is travel. I mean, if you're going to travel, we met a kid at the North Shore Natural backstage. Shout out Chris Wareman. Yeah, he's the man. He competed in men's physique. That was his first show, but he traveled from New York to do that show. So if you're traveling from New York and you're competing in Massachusetts and you don't have anybody to stay with, well, after you do a bodybuilding show, you are not going to be able to drive home. Like, you are going to be absolutely exhausted. And I can tell you that from experience. After every, well, not every, I mean, I've only done 2, but after both bodybuilding shows, doesn't matter how much, caffeine I have during the day, doesn't matter how much I eat to carb up, I will be absolutely exhausted at 8 o'clock. You're not going to be able to drive 4 or 5 hours back. You're not going to want to go to a terminal, hop on a plane, fly all the way back, get your luggage. Like, it's just going to be miserable. So if you end up doing that, you're going to have to stay at a hotel. You're going to have to pay for your meals probably, unless you travel with them, which can be a little bit tricky to figure out. But if you can do that, I definitely recommend it over buying meals, just because what's there, and you've prepared it yourself. It's going to digest well. So, but yeah, travel is huge. That can be a huge expense if you're going, multiple hours away and, staying somewhere else. So yeah, you can add that on top of whatever you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, well said. Um, they both cost a lot of money. We'll just say that. So don't do it for the money.
Yeah,
Do
exactly,
it because you love
exactly.
it.
Right, right. I mean, the payouts for bodybuilding shows, for especially drug tested shows, the payouts for powerlifting meets are like barely. I mean, if you win, they might cover like the
Fee.
cost of doing it. So
Exactly.
this is something that you're not. This is not going to be a job unless you're Phil Heath. So
Oh, yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah, the best and most efficient way to gain weight. Okay. Um, yeah, so I would say if you're trying to gain weight, well, first and foremost, the most important thing is how many calories you are consuming. That is always the most important thing for any type of diet, whether you're trying to lose weight, trying to maintain your weight, or you're trying to gain weight. So what we call a caloric surplus is basically when you eat more than your maintenance calories. And what maintenance calories are the certain amount of calories you need to maintain your exact body weight. So say Jared is 205 and he needs 3,000 calories to maintain his body weight. If he eats 3,500 calories a day, he will be gaining roughly 500 calories a day, which adds up to about 3,500 calories a week. That's roughly or so about a pound a week or so. And conversely, if he were eating 2,500, which is 500 less per day, he would be losing about a pound a week. Now these are weekly averages. Day to day sometimes can get iffy, but if you look week to week or even month to month, that's where you really see the progress.
right, absolutely. And I think you know, beyond that, your maintenance calories are not a stable amount. So if you weigh 230 pounds and your maintenance calories are 4,000 calories a day because you're very active and you lift a lot, and you're sitting around 230, well, when you cut down to like, say you're able to drop 10, 15 pounds, your maintenance calories are going to go down as well because you're not carrying around as much mass, whether that's lean body mass or fat, doesn't matter. Um, Unless you're enhanced and you're taking different anabolics or fat burners, stuff like that. Your maintenance calories are going to come down with your body weight. So it's important to recognize that if you are starting at 4,000 calories a day and you go to 3,500 calories a day, you're not just going to keep losing weight by eating 3,500 calories a day week to week. The first week or two, you might see a pound a week. The third week, you might only see half a pound. The fourth week, you might not lose anything at all because that's your new maintenance calories. So now you got to go even lower, which is why it's important when you're cutting or trying to lose body fat that you start as slowly as possible. You don't just go from 4,000 calories a day to 2,000 calories a day because then when your metabolism adapts, where do you go from there? You'll have to eat less. You'll have to add cardio, and you're just not going to have a fun time, especially going into a physique show. So, and this is true for powerlifters as well, because if you're trying to drop into a weight class and you do it all at once, that's great. But now all of a sudden you have less mass to push the weight with. You're not going to feel very good because you've been dropping weight for so long, and you probably don't have that much glycogen in your muscles. You probably don't feel as strong. So it's important to take these things as slowly as possible and to try to get out in front of whatever you're doing. So say you have a show that you want to do or a powerlifting meet that you want to do, you should try to be at your goal weight at least a couple weeks before the show or the meet. Just because they're, typically on a prep, you will mess up. There will be days that, let's say you want to go out with your family because it's somebody's birthday, and you have some cake and you have some cookies, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, this is so good, I can't stop eating, and then you mess up and you go way over your calories for the day. Well, in the grand scheme of things, that's not the biggest deal in the world, but if you do that every week, that adds up. So you don't want to get yourself into a point where you feel so depleted and so hungry that you just keep binge eating and then you punish yourself with more cardio and more restriction. That's how you get eating disorders. So, and I can talk about that pretty personally because I've been there, and I think a lot of people who have competed in bodybuilding or even powerlifting have been there. Any sort of sport where you have to gain or lose body weight to any extreme is going to have issues like that. So, yeah, you have to be careful with that. But like Luke said, you have to be in a caloric surplus if you want to gain weight. And that doesn't mean that all your extra calories should be coming from candy. They shouldn't, you shouldn't just be like, oh, well, I need more calories, so I'm going to replace this, let's say this steak and rice and stuff like that with like a pizza every day, because that food is less nutrient dense, probably less bioavailable, and it's just going to wreak havoc on your gut. Like you're just not going to feel good if you just eat pizza all day, every day. It's just not healthy. So, yeah, I think in terms of gaining weight, try to eat foods that digest very well for you, foods that are nutrient dense. Um, you know, try to get some of those more calorie dense foods in there. So like say for breakfast, if you eat like egg whites, eat whole eggs instead. If you're eating chicken breast all the time, eat steak for a couple of your meals. And then, for your carbohydrates, if you're having something like real filling, like say like a brown rice, maybe switch to like a white rice. And then you'll probably be able to digest a whole lot more of it. You'll probably feel a lot better, probably have some more energy, and just keep ramping that metabolism up. Because like we've said, when you start cutting, your metabolism drops. Well, conversely, when you start gaining weight, your metabolism increases because your body wants to stay at whatever weight it's at.
Yeah.
So, you're gonna have to keep up with it. You'll probably have to increase your daily caloric intake by a couple hundred calories every couple weeks. And yeah, just try to stick with the nutrient dense foods. Try to stick with, some more calorie dense foods. If you're eating, like I said, a lot of things that really fill you up, that take up a lot of space, like vegetables. And, if you're just like piling down broccoli with every meal, well, you might want to have a little bit less of those fibrous, vegetables, and, maybe a little bit more steak here and there. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Agreed.
Get those calories in.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said. We talked about this earlier, but drinking your calories is one of the best
exactly.
ways to add extra calories to your diet, because eating can be a pain, especially if you're trying to bulk. You've been eating more and more, you're plateauing. I've been there. I was almost 260. I was eating 5,500 calories a day to try and maintain that.
Monster.
And basically what I would have to do is I would make shakes with peanut butter in them, and I would add anything I could that was calorie dense. Things with fats in them, proteins in them, that are highly bioavailable are the best things you can do. Milk, any type of butter, coconut butter, peanut butter, stuff like that. That's what I would recommend.
That's huge. Yeah, I think the shakes are definitely that's basically should be a staple if you're having trouble gaining weight off of real food. That's where a protein shake can really come in handy. Is have some, throw some whole milk into a blender, throw a scoop of protein powder in there, a banana, some peanut butter, and then, if you really need it, maybe some vanilla or chocolate ice cream. I mean, if you really need the calories that bad, if you're a wrestler or a runner or something like that, and you just can't gain weight, you will need some of those, quote unquote junk foods in there, just because you need the extra calories, and it's going to be real hard to get them elsewhere. So, yeah, make those mass gainer shakes. That's one of the best things that you can do, in my opinion, in order to gain weight. And, like we said, drink them after you've already eaten a meal, because they're going to be way easier to drink, after you eat than to eat something after you drink like a massive shake. Like it's just not going to work. So, yeah.
Sure. All right, so I think that's our answers for that one. Do you do any cardio? From my friend Brittany. So I'm not sure if that's a joke, because it kind of is funny, but I personally, I do cardio. I do less when I'm trying to gain weight, but either way, I still do it at least 3 to 5 times a week. Right now, after my heavy leg days, or just any leg day in general, I tend to bike for about 10 to 15 minutes. I find that it helps me keep the blood in my muscles. It helps stimulate growth. Sorry, and I'd say it just helps me keep up with my cardiovascular efficiency and endurance, which is important for everyone. I would say strength training is great, but everyone needs to do a little bit of cardio too.
Absolutely. Cardio is great for obviously your cardiovascular system, your heart. It's great to move blood around in your body. Blood is, what's going to help restore your muscle mass. It's going to help you recover from your workouts. I typically tend to do usually a 5 to 10 minute warm up and cool down, either on a bike or a Stairmaster, or, it could be something as simple as walking on a treadmill on an incline. Something not super high intensity, because that can kind of interfere with your strength training workouts, but something that you can do, get your heart rate up, break a light sweat, and help you get warmed up for your workout. And then conversely, at the end, cool down from your workout. Move some blood around. I think in terms of structured cardio, I really don't do any like HIIT training anymore, so high intensity interval training. I think it interferes too much with my weight training, and where I, both Luke and I love to train. We train, almost every day, 6 to 7 days a week, and sometimes it is 7 days a week here
Yeah,
and there.
absolutely.
This past week, yeah, I'm on 7 days of training in a row right now, so I sometimes just can't take a break because I love it. But
Yeah,
um, you know, you can get away with that if you're eating and sleeping enough, but
absolutely.
just be careful.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I think that doing a lot of hit training, if your main goal is muscular hypertrophy or strength gains, is not going to be that conducive to what you're doing. That being said, if you're an athlete, I think it's great. If you're just looking to lose some body fat and you are, let's say, like a stay-at-home mom who isn't super active, or you work a desk job, and you don't lift weights all that much, I think that can be really beneficial to do some sprints here and there on a bike, or have some time on the stairmaster. Um, I would say for strength and physique athletes, stay away from those long, boring sections on the stairs where you're just going at a constant rate the entire time. Um, it's not very muscle sparing, and it's not conducive to what you're doing. You want to always spend more time lifting weights than you do on a cardio machine,
Absolutely.
because you want your body to adapt to the weightlifting. You don't want it to adapt to the cardio. If you're a power lifter, what's going to be more important, your cardiovascular fitness or your ability to lift one rep maxes? Obviously, the one rep maxes. And if you're a bodybuilder, do you want to look like somebody who runs marathons, or do you want to look like somebody who lifts weights? Obviously, somebody who lifts weights. So um, I think the whole 10-minute walk movement is something that's absolutely like we knew
Movements.
we knew it was coming up.
Yeah,
We
oh,
knew we were going to talk about it at some point. Um, 10-minute walks after meals are just like one of the best things that you can do for your health. Um, it's so simple. It takes so little time, and it gets you in a really great mindset. It helps you kind of get into a rhythm where you have some positivity, some time to clear your mind. They can almost be like a meditative sort of thing. Um, I mean, if you go on a 10-minute walk 2, 3, 4 times a day, it's actually been shown that you are more apt to retain lean body mass and burn more body fat if you do 4 10-minute walks a day as opposed to one 40-minute walk a day, which I think is really interesting. And I think it's just a lot easier because a lot of people don't want to like get up, go to the gym, and then walk on a treadmill for 40 minutes. That's so boring. I mean, you could just get up from your desk job and walk around the office space or walk around the building outside for 10 minutes. And, you do that a couple times a day. That's the cardio that you need. Um, it helps, as we said, move blood around to the muscles. It helps you recover. And I think it can just be absolutely huge for just stimulating recovery, helping muscle protein synthesis, improving nutrient partitioning. Um, so I don't really do you know cardio per se, but I do, I go for walks. I warm up and cool down on a bike or a stairmaster, and apart from that, I lift with a lot of volume, and I keep my diet relatively in check. So um, that's what I need. Other people might need different things depending on what their goals are, but I think in terms of physique athletes and in terms of powerlifters, the amount of cardio you do isn't super important, as long as you're healthy and you feel like you can breathe during your sets. So
absolutely. Now, I would say some people, for instance, I like to play basketball once or twice a week, and that's definitely not conducive to keeping my muscle mass, like you said. But if you are going to do it because you enjoy it, which you should do, because most of us are not going to be the top 1% of the elite, we should eat and rest more. Those are the two most important things. You have to stabilize and increase the amount of calories you eat, because if you do not, then your body will be like, "What are you doing to me?"
absolutely.
And it will not be able to grow. If you do extra things, you need to increase your caloric intake, and that's just simple. That's just how it is.
Right, right. And you shouldn't be giving up things that you like to do in the pursuit of cardio or anything really. I mean, if you hate sitting there on a treadmill but you like playing basketball, why would you
Yeah.
sit on a treadmill when you could just go out and shoot around? I
Right.
mean, you're
Exactly.
still being active. Just because most people wouldn't consider it like structured cardio doesn't mean you're not moving, doesn't mean you're not getting the blood flowing, doesn't mean your heart rate isn't up. So find something outside that you like to do. If it's hiking or going for bike rides or playing basketball with your friends, or walking your dog. I mean, anything like that is all it's all conducive to, getting a better cardiovascular system, getting some blood flow moving around, and just keeping yourself healthy. And you know, obviously in sports and in life, mental health is just as important as physical health a lot of the time. So do things that make you happy, that you want to do. Don't just slog away on a treadmill because you feel like you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right, we answered that question. Okay, so we got bench goals by the end of the year. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go?
You go. Yours is way more impressive.
It's not true. So this is from my friend Jameson. He's this 14-year-old who's absolutely shredded. He's trying to compete in his first bodybuilding show, I think 5 months from now. I'm like happy for you, dude, and I can't wait to see what you do in a couple years because you're starting so young. I see you in the gym all the time. You work hard. So, but back to the question, 405. By the end of this year, I will be benching 405 pounds. Paused, off the chest, competition commence. Because
what's your max right now?
Right now, probably 370. In a couple weeks, I think it'll be back up to 385, which was my previous best.
All time, yeah. 385.
But I'm much lighter than I was when I last hit it.
Yeah.
Even 365. I mean, right now I'm sitting at 225, and I was almost 260 when I hit last time.
That's huge. That's a huge bench.
Yeah, 405 will be almost double body weight actually.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. That's a long time, lifetime goal for me. 450. And 405 is 4 plates, which everyone loves. So,
yeah. Most people are looking for that as like a squat or deadlift max.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I would love to hit that. What about you?
That's awesome. So for me, I casually run some powerlifting programs in the off season just to maintain and like gain strength, which I think has honestly helped me a lot in my bodybuilding, because I think I'm a big believer in, if you want to be big, being stronger is never going to hurt you, because you're going to be able to move more weight, more volume. And I think honestly, just anecdotally, you build like a thicker, kind of harder looking muscle with heavy weight. I mean, look at all the guys that in the gym, that train for a pump. Somebody who goes to a squat rack the first thing in their workout, as opposed to somebody who goes to a leg extension, you can just tell by looking at them that their results are different. You can equate volume all you want, but they are just going to have a different look. Right. Bodybuilding is a very kind of subjective sport, and I think a lot of the times the science around it is great, but I also think that there are some things that we can learn anecdotally just from watching people. And I think it's very hard to discredit that. So that being said, my current max, well, not my current max, my all-time best is 355. And I would love to get to 365 this year, 3.5 plates. I don't think 10 pounds on my all-time best is going to be too hard to beat. That being said, I plan on staying at a lighter body weight this off season. When I hit 355, I was about 228. I want to say I was up almost at 230. Yeah. And this off season, I don't plan on going over about 220. So I will be lighter, but I think I can get 365 at that body weight. Long-term goal would also be like Luke to bench 405, but that will take a few years based on the fact that I cut down for bodybuilding shows, and I lose a lot of strength when I do that. My max from 355 dropping down to my lowest weigh-in after this prep was 187 pounds before I carved up. At 187 pounds, my max was about 295. Yeah. So, I mean, I lost, 60 pounds off my bench during that prep, and it's going to take a decent amount of time to get all that strength back, obviously. So I'm kind of working from a very low baseline. But that being said, I think this winter definitely want to hit 365, which would be awesome.
That is.
So, yeah, those are the goals.
Awesome. Yeah, let's get it. All right. So we got one more question. It is opinions on the keto diet by my friend Jesse. You want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think keto is interesting. A lot of the diets out there that have very recognizable names are. You have to kind of be wary, because people think like, oh, I'm on the keto diet, I must be getting healthier, I must be losing weight. Well, guess what? You can eat in a keto diet and get fatter. Like, just because you're eating quote unquote keto doesn't mean that you're in a caloric deficit, and doesn't mean you're in a caloric surplus either. But I think that the keto diet works especially well for people who are more endurance based. people who don't require a lot of carbohydrates to perform. Um, so if you are the type of person who would rather have oatmeal than steak before the gym, I don't think the keto diet's going to be really right for you. Um, I think for physique athletes, it is important to have carbs in your diet. They help fill you out. They help your energy in the gym. You will probably feel better with carbs in your system at a much lower body fat than you would if you were on keto at 4% body fat on stage. Um, that being said, there are a lot of health benefits to keto if you have other things going on, like let's say like what was one of the main ones? There were a couple studies done that actually showed it could have like benefits for like cancer patients.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard
Um,
about that.
and like Alzheimer's patients, especially. Uh, Basically, in a keto diet, your body produces ketones and uses those as energy as opposed to carbohydrates. So the ketones are very, I guess, friendly to your brain. It's one of the few nutrients that your brain actually allows up into
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so basically, ketones are very good for your mental health, and I think that you can get away with training as a powerlifter or bodybuilder on the keto diet. I would be wary of saying it's optimal because I really don't. But that being said, one of my favorite quotes is the best diet is the one that you'll stick to. So if you absolutely love eating the keto diet and that's the only way you can get yourself into a caloric deficit to lose weight, absolutely, by all means, go for it because you're not going to see results on a diet that you hate because you're not going to stick to it. The number one driver of success when dieting is how well you can stick to the diet consistently.
Yeah.
So if you can't stick to a diet consistently because you don't like it, that's not the right diet for you. And conversely, if there's a diet that you really like that you can stick to, that's what you should be doing. Um, so I think that for people who feel really good on a high fat diet, who don't really need a lot of carbohydrates, who still feel good in the gym, whose mental health stays solid, and who enjoys eating fatty foods more than sugary foods or like carbohydrate based foods, keto may be really right for you. I would just be careful of falling into that camp that says, you know, keto is the be all end all of diets because it's just not. There is no be all end all of diets. There is no one best diet because, like I said, the best diet is the one that you'll stick to. So,
Right.
I mean, those are my thoughts
Yeah.
on keto.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I can't imagine not having carbs as a power lifter. It's your body's preferred source of energy. I just can't. At some point in your life, even if you do keto, you're going to have carbohydrates. You're going to need them. It's one of the major macronutrients. There are three. So you can't just stay away from carbs for the rest of your life. I do think it is viable to use for certain people, like you said. Some people can stick to that diet easier than others because fat specifically is really high. It basically makes you full.
Yeah,
It curbs hunger, even though it has a higher calorie per gram than the other two macronutrients. I think for most people, the keto diet is something that is definitely, I would try it. I would say try it out if you're looking for something to try out that's new. But as you said, the best diet is the one that you can stick to.
yeah, absolutely. And I think so Mark Bell obviously is like the number one proponent of keto in like the
Absolutely.
industry.
Yeah.
So he is very pro keto. That being said, I think he has a lot of good information about it. But I think one of the things that I like about him when he talks about keto is basically the idea of getting away from some of the foods that might be triggers for you. So if you have cookies around the house all the time and you're just like, oh, I want a cookie. It's sugary, it's fatty, like it tastes good. Getting away from those foods that trigger you to kind of binge eat or just go way off your diet
Yeah.
for like 2-3 weeks will put you in a way better mindset, and you'll have way more ability to kind of stick to the diet as opposed to if you just have like quote unquote trigger foods around all the time that you just snack on one and then all of a sudden you want something else and then you just kind of eat like crazy.
Yeah.
um, Getting yourself in a routine where you meal prep, you eat kind of the same foods each day, you kind of get away from some of those like quote unquote bad foods,
Yeah.
can be really beneficial, just mentally. And then physically, a lot of people with the keto diet will see a huge weight drop at the beginning because of the glycogen leaving their system.
Right.
they're depleting themselves of carbohydrates and of water because carbohydrates and water are stored together in the muscle cells, and when you don't have carbs, your muscle cells don't store as much water in them. So they'll look at the scale and be like, oh my god, I lost like 15 pounds this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they'll go and they'll eat like cake,
Yeah.
and then they'll be like, oh my god, I gained it all back. It's like, well, you never really lost 15 pounds. You just dropped all the water out of your system and then gained it all back.
Right.
So I think that's where people kind of like, they get on keto and they see those instantaneous results, and then they're like, this is the best diet ever. But in reality, those aren't lasting results. That's just like glycogen depletion. So I think if it's something that you can stick to long term, it can be really beneficial. I also think, like you said, it's a great way to start off a diet, and then maybe even transition into something else if you feel like it's not working. But just to kind of get into that mindset of dieting, I think it can be really beneficial as well. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something different to try, keto is definitely one of those diets that you can try. It's well researched, and there's a lot of information on how to do it online. So yeah, it's very accessible.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% agreed. So yeah, I think that's all the questions we have. Thanks, Jared. I mean, we're gonna post this up on social media and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's it for all the questions today. Again, I'm Luke Frankel. I'm glad you guys tuned in. I hope we answered some of your questions. And you can find me on Instagram under Luke Frankel 7. Basically, my goals for the future as of right now are to do this, help you guys out as much as I can, because as a trainer, I get these kind of questions all the time, and I figured why not help people achieve their own goals. In the future, I plan to either be a physical therapist or some kind of orthopedic doctor, and I want to open my own gym one day.
Awesome. Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Luke, for having me. This will be up on his YouTube channel, and I'll probably post it all over my social media as well, which will be awesome. Get both of us some exposure. You can find me on Instagram at jared.shepherd. That's not like a fitness page, but I do post personal stuff, and also all of my fitness related things on there as well. So it's kind of a mix, but if you want to get to know me, get to know me on there. Feel free to message me with any questions, reach out to either of us via DM, or however you can get in contact with us if you do have more questions. Basically, I am right now, I'm in kind of the same boat. I'm a personal trainer over at Cedardale Health and Fitness in Haverhill. I have about 12 clients right now. I'm also teaching strength and conditioning classes, Cedardale Strength and Conditioning. So I'm doing that about 3 times a day, which is why my voice is so hoarse. I basically lose my voice, every week, which is awesome because I get to yell, I get to get fired up. So it's a fun time over there for sure. But yeah, in terms of things going on, I'm graduating from UMass. I'm just finishing up 2 summer classes, and I'm done there. My major is business management and marketing, and I hope to apply that to the fitness world sometime by hopefully, like Luke, having my own practice, or working a startup or something where I'm in charge. So it will be fitness related for sure. I just want to see where the road kind of takes me, because we're obviously both still young, so we got a lot of time ahead of us to figure some stuff out. So yeah, and then next year, hopefully we'll be competing in my first pro bodybuilding show. So OCB Battle of New Hampshire in May. I'll be looking to attend that, and maybe win some money. We'll see.
Yeah, let's go.
So, yeah, it'll be fun.